Hello, welcome to the JimRPG show. It's May the 19th, 2020. We've got a big show coming up today. We're going to be talking about Nintendo's new game that they've just announced. We've also got another game from Paradox Interactive, and we've also got new APUs from AMD. So let's get straight into it. Okay, so Nintendo have announced Paper Mario. So it's called Paper Mario the Origami King, and it will be released on Nintendo Switch on July 17th, so it's not very long to go. Paper Mario the Origami King delivers a comedy-filled journey packed with puzzles, strategic ring-based battles, quirky characters, and stunning visuals. So this is from their press release. Okay, so it writes, looking to add an extra dimension to your adventures? Are you ready for your fun to increase tenfold? Well, a special invitation to a colorful paper-crafted world has arrived. Princess Peach is welcoming Mario and Luigi to attend the Kingdom's Origami Festival, when the Paper Mario the Origami King game launches exclusively for the Nintendo Switch family of systems on July 17th. So a little bit more detail here. Luckily, Mario is equipped with a range of new tools at his disposal to help secure victory. One of Mario's new abilities, called 1000 Fold Arms, allows you to interact with the landscape by stretching out and pulling, peeling, and revealing new locations, helping you to solve puzzles and uncover unexpected surprises. Along the way, you'll enlist the help of characters old and new, such as King Ollie's good-natured sister Olivia, along with a range of unlikely allies, including Bowser himself. If they haven't yet folded to the whims of King Ollie's origami will, Mario will accept all the help he can with open arms. So actually, that actually sounds like Tearaway. It's funny because the Vita probably, the Tearaway on Vita probably took Paper Mario as the inspiration, and now it looks like Paper Mario is also taking some inspiration from Tearaway. And by the way, Tearaway was a great game on the Vita. If you haven't played it, I'd suggest go and check that out. Okay, so yeah, with things like by stretching out and pulling the landscape, you could do a little bit of that in Tearaway, because with the you had the touch screen on the top, and also you had it wasn't a screen, but you could touch the back of the Vita hardware, the Vita handheld, and you could manipulate the environment, and that was pretty cool. I think overall the Vita backpad was a bit of a waste, but in Tearaway it was put to good use. So it will be launched. Paper Mario the Origami King will be launched on July 17th at a suggested retail price of $59.99. And yeah, it's not long to go. And as we speculated in a couple of shows ago, when we were talking about Nintendo's financial year results, we knew that it couldn't possibly just be Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition and Clubhouse 51 games for, say, the next 2 or 3 months. And look, they didn't say anything in their financial year report literally like a week ago, but now 1 week later they have Paper Mario. They're announcing Paper Mario, so you can expect pretty much a lot more games from Nintendo for the rest of the year. When they say that they're not expecting earnings to they're expecting earnings to be lower for the coming year versus the year before, it just means that they haven't announced as many games as they would like, and they didn't want to announce higher earnings, because then that would make it a lot harder for them to actually go and beat them anyway. So that's the reason why they were very quiet about all of their releases. They didn't give any hints at all during their financial year report. And yeah, we're going to get more games, not just July 17th, but for the rest of the year. But with Nintendo's strategy, they're very careful at how they make announcements. So that's why we are seeing Nintendo do Nintendo Directs, because it gives them a very focused presentation where, and I think that's a good thing actually. We don't need like 2-3 hour shows, especially from first party. We just need some announcements. We need gameplay in the trailers, and they need to be coming very quickly after the announcements, so that we're not waiting for so long for the games to come out. We don't want a game announcement 3 or 4 years before the game actually comes out. Now Sony does this a lot, but they do it for different reasons. They want to build the hype because they're all about next gen, and they're all about the future. But for Nintendo, what's been really working well for them is announcing something and then it's coming out like 2 or 3 months later. And that's what's happening with Paper Mario. Now, Paradox has a new game coming out that they've just announced. Well, Crusader Kings III had already been announced, but now it's got a release date. So Crusader Kings III gets a September 1st release date. And PC Gamer goes on to write a bit about Crusader Kings III. There's not that much info there because they've already announced the game. Basically, Crusader Kings III is a sort of medieval royalty, kings and queens type of simulator. This is kind of different to Europa Universalis 3, where it's more about strategic military domination over the rest of Europe. In Crusader Kings 3, it's more of a role-playing experience where you're kind of playing out the role of the king, and then I guess making decisions on behalf of the kingdom. So it's a completely different take. The only thing that is the same about both of those games, Europa Universalis and Crusader Kings, is that there's a map of Europe. And basically with Crusader Kings, you're making a lot of decisions that the king and the queen would make. And yeah, look, Crusader Kings is one of the big flagship titles for Paradox. And so I don't see any situation where this would fail. They're going to be looking after this because Crusader Kings and Europa Universalis, they make Paradox tons of money through constant DLC. And it's one of those things where they have these titles, even though it doesn't, it may not be gameplay complete right at the start. They will continually update and update them with more DLC, with more gameplay modes, with more gameplay mechanics, with every DLC pack. And so it's almost like a continuing experience. When it ships, it's not basically it's not the final version. And they make a lot of money this way. You know, they sell you the game for $60, and then they may sell you DLC packs for like $15, but over the course of like 3, 4, 5 years. And Crusader Kings 2, the previous version, I believe came out around 2012. So it's been a good 8 years since the last one came out, and they've supported it for a long time. So if you are interested, this is more of a complex grand strategy game than say the Civilization series. So I think yeah, if you're interested, go and check that out on Steam. and it will be released in a few months. Let's talk about Evo, because Evo, the fighting game championship, is postponed. Sorry, not postponed. It's online now, so they've cancelled the physical meetup. Now, here's the Evo 2020 lineup. So we've got Under Night in Birth. I think that's the late CLR version. So I believe that would be the latest version for Under Night in Birth. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate on the Switch. Dragon Ball FighterZ. Tekken 7, Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Now that is the Tournament of Champions. So that's a little bit different. So basically, they have a special Marvel vs. Capcom 20 invitational tournament that celebrates the game's 20th anniversary. Street Fighter V Champion Edition. Soul Calibur 6, Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, and Samurai Showdown. So that's an interesting lineup of games. Just by looking at it, I don't see Mortal Kombat 11, which the article rightly says here that the one glaring omission is Mortal Kombat 11. But at the same time, I would also say they don't have King of Fighters. So I wonder how the fans of that series, whether they think they deserve to be in the Evo 2020 lineup, even at least King of Fighters 14, the latest version, seemed like it was okay. It had fans. But yeah, we've got Grand Blue Fantasy Versus. Now that is an Arc System Works game, which I didn't know about actually. So I guess that's why we've got at least one Arc Work Systems game there. But but I think that's a pretty interesting lineup. You've got the big hitters there like Super Smash Brothers and Street Fighter, Tekken and Soul Calibur 6, and I guess they'll be the ones that people are going to be watching the most. Now, Konami, makers of Pro Evolution Soccer 2020, also otherwise known as ePES Football, they have some DLC out for the game. Basically, Kotaku writes, big soccer tournament shelved. Konami releases DLC for it anyway. So the big soccer tournament is Euro 2020, and the DLC is free anyway, so that's basically why they're releasing it. So the Euro 2020 was supposed to be this summer around June, July, and they postponed it till 2021, and Pro Evo are just coming out with it anyway, because, well, they'll probably just recycle it for next year. So they may as well come out with it for this year. So inside the DLC, there's the UEFA Euro 2020 tournament mode, all 55 UEFA national teams licensed, Wembley Stadium and St. Petersburg Stadium, official trophy and ball, UEFA Euro 2020 featured players, themed match days, and team of the tournament. That's pretty cool, that there's a new mode basically, and you can just play through Euro 2020. It's just got all of their fancy Euro UEFA logos basically slapped onto their tournament mode inside the game. So it's not that much, but it's kind of cool. I think with Konami, they probably need to do more with Pro Evo, because I believe it's getting trounced more and more every year by FIFA. Basically everyone is playing FIFA now. I hardly know anybody that's playing ePES Football, even though, you know, ePES Football is not a bad game. It's just that every year it feels the same. So it's been feeling the same for like at least 3 or 4 years now, and that kind of also has to do with the fact that there just aren't very many sales and many people playing. Pro Evolution Soccer, which is a bit sad because there were the glory days when Pro Evolution Soccer 1, 2, and 3, where it was doing really well in spite of the fact that it had no licensing in the game at all. And it was doing well enough to compete with FIFA, but FIFA had all of the licensing. And now, actually, in the last few years, they've tried to market some of that and do some licensing in the game. So they've had some teams, especially on the cover, to make it look like that they've, it's a licensed game. But for a lot of people who play, they need all of the teams. They need all of the teams represented. They don't just want Manchester United or Arsenal or Real Madrid. They want all of the teams and the leagues licensed, and they don't really see that much difference in the gameplay. The gameplay has improved quite dramatically in FIFA, even though I believe it's still quite different. But the gap has closed enough for people to just say, okay, I want FIFA because it's got the licensed teams. But I don't really see a way out for Konami, really. There's still going to be people like me, the diehard Pro Evo fans that just continue to cling on to Pro Evo because they just feel like that system is better. But it's kind of dying a slow death, and if it's not going to phase out in the PS5 era, I believe it will probably phase out before the PS6 era. next gen. Right. So if you missed the news, Epic Game Store has Grand Theft Auto 5 for free this week, and so I think it started around the 13th or 14th of May 2020, and it will go through to 21st of May 2020, where it will be free. And this will be the premium edition. So the premium edition includes the complete GTA 5 story, Grand Theft Auto Online, all existing gameplay upgrades and content. You'll also get the Criminal Enterprise Starter Pack, the fastest way to jumpstart your criminal empire. I believe the Criminal Starter Pack has like $1 million in GTA money for the online mode. So now we don't really advertise people's free games, Epic Games, a lot. So, but this one, Grand Theft Auto, seems like it's a pretty big deal. So, yeah, go ahead and go and get that for Epic Game Store. And I guess there's another thing to note, really, is that Epic Game Store seems like they just won't give up on their chase to take down Steam. And this is another piece of evidence that they're just going as hard as they did 1 year ago when they started their store. They got off to a huge head start with Fortnite, of course. Steam, if they carry on the way that they're doing, basically with their non-competitive rate for developers, where it's a 70-30 split for the revenues, where Steam gets 70% and the developer gets 30%, it's just not enough to entice these developers and publishers not to go with Epic Game Store. With Epic Game Store, you get a 88 and 12 revenue split. So the developers get 88% and EGS, Epic Game Store, gets 12%. There's no reason for them not to go with Epic Game Store. And Epic Game Store is just getting so much momentum right now. This won't be the only big game that they're giving away for free during their summer sale. It's been rumored that it's going to be Civilization 6 next week, followed by Borderlands 3, I believe. A Borderlands game. It could be the Handsome Collection. It could be Borderlands 3. I'm not 100% sure. And then the final week will be Ark, Survival Evolved. That's 4 really big games that they're giving away, and they're going to be pulling a lot of players from Steam, especially when people from people playing on Epic Game Store starts to build a library and think about just buying their games off Epic Game Store, especially when they know that they're probably helping the developer. So I think that's a bit of a concern for Steam. They seem like they do not want to give up their revenue split. So I can only see that being a negative for Steam right now, and they're going to lose people if they're not careful. Now, of course, they don't want a race to the bottom, but they need to do more. They need to get people on with exclusives for Steam. They need developers to embrace Steam, and the revenue split is one of the biggest hurdles for them right now, I think, and so I think they need to do something about it. Okay, let's quickly talk about the Sony financial year results. Now, I did talk about the Nintendo results in a JimRPG episode, but then I did the Capcom results as an external video. But I think nobody really wants to talk about these financial year results for like 40 minutes. So I think the best thing to do really is to just do a really quick overview, give you like the 1 or 2 major highlights, and then you can read the rest for yourself, because it's probably too hard to follow given that there's so many numbers being tossed around when I do these financial year reviews. Okay, so basically Sony had their financial year reports out last week, and it was another huge year for Sony. That said, let's quickly go over the numbers. So they had 18.19 revenue, and that's I believe 18.19 revenue for the PlayStation, because their total revenue was 80 billion for the entire Sony corporation. So PlayStation had 18 billion by itself, and it was the second best year ever for PlayStation, and second biggest revenue for any platform holder in video game history. Now, hardware wise, they sold 13.6 million PS4s. Now, to compare that with Nintendo Switch sold 20 million Switches last year, about 13 million in the regular Switch, and about 6 in the Switch Lite. So they're still some way off, but that said, Nintendo Switch is in its 3rd year, and so the PlayStation 4 is in its 5th year. So these are still really impressive numbers for the PS4. And the thing is, it hasn't really had a price cut in a couple of years now. So the PS4 is holding really strong. I believe the base PS4, the MSRP is still $299 in the US. I think that's expensive. I think this is a $199 console, which will be when the PS5 comes out. But I think right now $299 seems expensive for a 5-year-old console. I think the PS4 has done an amazing job. If you bought one at launch for $399, then that's an amazing deal. $399, and it's only dropped $100 in the last 5 years. And basically, the PS4, people can talk about how PC has all the games and it gets all the third-party games. You could say the reverse about the PS4 as well. Like, the PS4 is basically a low-spec PC, and it's got all of the games that would come out on the PC anyways. So if you just wanted a machine that plays games and has tons and tons of games, pretty much everything that you could think of, aside from Nintendo first-party titles. The PS4 is a no-brainer, especially at $399 launch price. It's basically come out with everything in the last 5 years. Software-wise, so Sony sold 245 million games, and that was the fourth, I believe, their fourth year with more than 200 million games sold. And lifetime to date is 1.2 billion games sold for PS4. One thing I just want to go back to the hardware is that the lifetime for PS4 is 110 million units. So that is a huge number, considering PS2 holds the record right now for 150 million units. I believe, can it catch up? Can it make up 40 million units, possibly in the next 2 or 3 years? Yeah, I believe it can, because PS4, there's two models. There's the base model, which is $199, which will be $199, I should say, when the PS5 comes out. I believe they will sell the PS4 Pro for about $299, and then you'll have the PS5 at, say, like $499. So there'll be a bit of a gap between PS4 and PS5 Pro, PS5, and for people who still have a 1080p TV, the PS4 Pro is a decent system, not a great system because it's still held down by their CPU cores, which are very slow. But if you just wanted a system that play 1080p games, yeah, the PS4 is still an amazing system for the next 2 or 3 years. So yes, I believe that it's going to still do really well. You know, a lot of kids are going to have 1080p TVs in their room. They're not going to have the latest 4K TV in their room. The PS4 is a perfect console for a 1080p TV. Right, so let's continue on. There's just a couple more things that I wanted to say. I don't want to say too much because it's easier for you guys to just look at the results yourself. So we know that PlayStation is their biggest segment of their market, and they take 26% of all of the profits for Sony, which is why Kaz Hirai is the leader of Sony right now. He came from PlayStation, so it's natural that a PlayStation lead, the biggest segment of the market, gets to lead the company. Okay, there was a really good graph. Oh, well, this is interesting. So if you look at, so the PS2 line is the blue line, and the PS4 line is the purple line, and yeah, PS4 is ahead. It's maintained that gap from the start, mostly because PS2 was very expensive at the start. It was, I think it was $399, and PS4, you know, given relative comparative rates between, say, 2000 and 2015, 15 years later, yeah, $399 in 2015 is much cheaper than $399 in 2000. Now, this is the chart I want to show. In 2015, the physical copies greatly outnumbered the digital copies, and if you remember back in like 2013 or 2014, Xbox One came out with a system where you couldn't, there was some sort of like digital key, and you couldn't trade games, which completely backfired on them. And Sony came out with a video where you could swap games with your friends, and it became a really big meme. We had Adam Boyes give Yoshida Shu a game, and that was how they described sharing games. And so that got a lot of hype and a lot of positive press between people, because yeah, why can't you just give somebody your copy of the game to share with somebody, to swap games, because that used to be a thing that gamers did a lot. 5 years later, now we have 50% of the games sold as digital versus about 50% of the physical. So it's completely changed. The landscape of games has completely changed. One, from physical copies being bought in department stores and chains like Walmart, to getting 50% of the market on the PlayStation Network. And if you look at these physical numbers, they've actually declined since 2017, from 166 million copies in 2017 down to about 120 million last year. And as more and more people buy digital, they're going to see that it's a lot more convenient to just buy digitally. And I've been saying this for a while now, even though, I do like a physical copy sometimes, especially with the Switch, where you can just trade with your family members. For example, if you have multiple Switches, then you can just trade the cartridge. But with the PS4 or any next gen or current gen console, it just makes a lot of sense to have the digital copy, especially if it's just the one person playing. Especially for myself, where I play single player games, it doesn't make a sense to have a ton of physical copies anymore. It's just way easier to have it as a, say, Steam library, where you have a list of the games, and the sales are starting to show that for PS4. And I believe if it's not PS5, it will definitely be PS6, where it will just be digital only, I think. And I don't think people are going to go to the stores anymore to get games. Now, the stores actually give the games a lot of free press, because they get a lot of space in the store to do their advertising. But I think there'll be enough exposure by, say, PS6 era, where people will just be going online to see the games that they want to buy anyway, and people will be talking a lot about the games on, say, Twitter or Facebook, and that's already happening right now. There'll be other ways for Sony to market their games, and not just in physical stores. So one last thing I wanted to point out was the PlayStation Plus members here. So when they first started PS4, back in 2014-15, they had 12 million PlayStation Plus members, but they've grown that every single year, and now 2019 to 2020, they have 41.5 million PS Plus members. Now, I don't know exactly if that is current online players, because there may be people who have finished a sub and then haven't joined for the next month, or maybe they're taking a break for a couple of months. But let's just assume that there are 41.5 million current PS Plus members that are playing online every month. That is a huge number of people, especially when you consider that there's only 110 million PlayStation 4 consoles sold. So about half of the people want to play multiplayer online. Now, I'm sure there are some that are just buying it for the 2 or 3 free games that they're getting every month. But honestly, I see that most people are going to be playing online. And, the thing is, they do have some free-to-play online games. So it kind of makes sense to get an online subscription, especially if the PlayStation 4 is your only console that you can play games on. You don't have a PC, then yeah, sure, it makes sense to get PlayStation Plus because that's the only way you're going to play online. That said, honestly, if you are a PlayStation Plus member, and you have been since the start of the PlayStation 4 era, you would have paid about $250, given that it's about $50 a year, $250 extra to play online. Now the console is $399, so if that's $400, you pay $650 for the console. And is that a good deal? I would say not really. I think like if you bought a PC, then you would be playing online for free. So it's sad that people have to pay for online on a console. I wish that would stop, but it looks like it's not stopping anytime soon. I guess that would be my point, because the PS Plus members keep growing, and if they keep growing, then Sony is not just going to all of a sudden stop charging for the service. They're going to continue to charge more, the same, if not more. So that's about all I wanted to say for the PlayStation financial year results. Sony, this technically should have been their worst year, given that they're just before a new console generation, but it was their second best year, which which is pretty incredible to think about when you bring out a new console if your old one isn't performing, right? But I think they've been kind of pushed to do this, both by Nintendo Switch, who had the latest system, even though it's not as powerful, because right now all of the talk is on Nintendo. They need to switch the conversation back to, well, Sony has the latest hardware, and they need to counteract Nintendo's dominance with something. And the best thing that Sony can do is to show the gap in performance again. And this is what they're doing with the PlayStation 5. And also they're also being pushed by Microsoft as well, with their Xbox Series X. So if they let Microsoft have the entire generation, entire holiday this year to themselves, it will be kind of like in the PlayStation 2 era. The PlayStation 2 had at least 6 months, I think, before the Xbox was released. And that 6 months was enough of a head start for people to get PlayStation 2s into their homes, to enjoy DVDs, and to talk about PlayStation 2. And Microsoft never really caught up in that generation. So PlayStation, even though they did incredibly well for this year, they're second best on record. They've been pushed by other Microsoft and Nintendo to release their PlayStation 5. Right, let's talk about some hardware news. And video cards has a leak for us. Is not official, but they've got a picture of the AMD Ryzen 7 4700G 8-core APU, and they reckon it looks pretty legit. And I don't really know. I guess it looks legit. It's a photo of the APU chip. As you know, APU has the combined CPU and GPU with integrated graphics on board. And this could be the start of the Ryzen 4000 series. Now, the headline is AMD Renoir with 8 cores and 8 compute units for desktop. So here it is, the Ryzen 7 4700G APU we have been seeing in numerous leaks over the past month. Our source claims that the product is a final version and it shouldn't be long before we see Renoir AM4 in stores. This marks the moment when AMD enters a new market segment, high performance APUs. So far only 4 core and 8 threads APUs were available with up to 11 compute units. I won't read all of it, but the 4700G is an AMD Renoir silicon based on Zen 2 architecture. The current Gen 3X00G series, like say the 3200 or the 3400G, is based on Picasso silicon with Zen Plus cores, which were 12 nanometer. On paper, bar the obvious core count upgrade, the new CPU appears to offer higher clocks for both the CPU and GPU cores. The major difference is the GPU core count, as the new silicon only offers up 8 compute units. The previous generation went up to 11 compute units. AMD has already explained this during mobile Renoir launch, that despite fewer compute units, graphics performance is still better due to various optimizations, GPU clock being the most obvious one. Now, this is their product stack currently. So this is a mobile, so this Ryzen 7 4700G is a mobile Renoir chip. I guess this is very similar to the Ryzen 9 4900H, and it will have 8 core 16 threads, and the base clock will be 3.6 gigahertz. The max boost clock is 4.4 gigahertz, and on the board it has 8 compute units of GPU graphics clocked at 2100 megahertz. So basically this is very similar to what we've been getting with the Ryzen 3 APU series, where they just had the 2200G, the 2400G, and then again a year later they had 3200G and 3400G. So the 4700G is their next in line, and I guess that they wanted to show that they wanted to boost their portfolio, and obviously they will probably have some Ryzen 5 4500G and then a Ryzen 3 4200G, something like that. They wanted to get out a higher core count to compete with Intel's product stack, because Intel's product stack, the entire lineup has all of them have variants that have integrated graphics. So if you wanted, say, like an i9 9900K with integrated graphics, there wouldn't be an AMD version of that. The AMD versions only had the CPUs on them, but the Intel models had one with integrated graphics and one without integrated graphics. And that's what they're doing here, is they want to compete against those CPUs. So really, AMD are really going after Intel, and they're coming out with more products that compete with them. Now, I don't know how much of a difference Renoir, the 4700G, would be to an actual desktop CPU of the 4000 series. I believe it's called Matisse, but I need to double check. So would this perform the same as the desktop? Possibly. We'll just have to wait for benchmarks to check out. But when I bought the Ryzen 3 2200G, yeah, that performed pretty close to what I expected to be desktop performance. So this isn't really just a mobile chip, it's just the architecture used for the mobile series, which had lower TDPs, and they were able to scale that to a desktop. And I believe it will probably have the same performance as regular desktop chips. But we'll see what the performance will be like for desktop Renoir 7 nanometer. Now, I think this is really interesting. how many, these Ryzen 3 and Ryzen 5s were quite interesting APUs, because these were the type of APUs that were used for people who wanted to build extraordinarily cheap budget computers. On a huge budget, basically. You could build a $300 to $400 computer with no graphics card, but because it had the integrated graphics on them, you would be able to play a lot of games. Now, the 2200 and the 2400G, which had the Vega graphics, it wasn't that strong. And, when we tested it out, it was not really 1080p capable. And it was really more, it did 720 just fine, but nobody these days, in 2018, 2019, when we bought it, nobody ever had a nobody had a 720p monitor. Everybody had a 1080p monitor, so you'd have to scale up the picture and it wouldn't look as good. So when the Vega graphics get to a point where you can get 1080p performance, 1080p 60 performance from the APU, I think that's going to be a really interesting CPU. And I think you will be able to build extraordinarily cheap budget computers, right down to, say, maybe like even $200. A 1080p 60 machine for $200, where your chip would only cost, your APU chip would cost $100, and the rest of your computer would cost $100, say, for the case and RAM and hard drive and power supply. You could get the other parts for, like, say, $100, $120, maybe $150 then. You could build a really cheap computer that could play 1080p 60, and that would be really amazing. Now, I know that doesn't seem very exciting to a lot of enthusiasts, who build 4K computers, capable of playing 4K, but I think there's a huge market out there, especially in developing countries, where you have something like a 3950X and it costs $1,000 or $700 or $800 just for the CPU, and that would be like somebody's salary for like 2 or 3 months. So it's clearly not affordable for a lot of people, enthusiast computers. However, if you're telling somebody that they could build a $200 computer, and that would be like 1 or 2 days of their salary, yes, that would be really interesting. That a $200 computer would be very, very interesting, and that would really shake up the market in the developing countries. And with the Ryzen 7 4700G, it's not going for that budget computer market. So I'm interested to see who this is for. The only thing that I can think of really is, okay, well, you want to put this, you want to buy this just in case you are waiting for a graphics card to come out. So, for example, if you are waiting for Ampere to come out in 6 months, then maybe you would just buy this and make do with the Vega graphics on board for 6 months. I don't know why you would do that, but I guess if you just wanted to prepare yourself, you could. Now, by the way, it only has 8 compute units for Vega graphics. However, I see a lot of rumors saying that it's about 50% better. So technically, if you wanted to compare this, the 4700G graphics with the 3400G, this would be the equivalent of, say, 16 old Vega graphics. So 11 to 16 would be pretty good. And plus there's a GPU clock of 2100. So look, we're talking about 50% difference in Vega graphics performance. Hopefully, if you pair that with some fast RAM, that's going to get you to 1080p 60 for some games at least. Not all games, PS4 quality, by the way, not next generation. But hopefully that gets you to a lot of games on PC from say maybe 2 or 3 years old, and that will get you to like say 1080 60. Okay, so let's have a look at our last article. And somebody, I guess from China, has done some testing on the latest Intel Comet Lake S CPUs. So they've done a test of the Intel Core i9-10900K, and they've done it versus the Ryzen 9 3950X. So let's have a quick look at some of the benchmarks. So it looks like with W Prime, AMD Ryzen 9 3950X is has the smallest, so I would assume that's probably smallest is better here, and W Prime uses more cores, so that's probably why the Ryzen 9 3950X is doing better than the Intel Core i9-10900K. Now the Intel Core i9-10900K has 10 cores, 20 threads. The AMD Ryzen 9 3900X, 12 cores, 24 threads. AMD Ryzen 9 3950X has 16 cores and 32 threads. So it seems like with W Prime, the more cores, threads, the better. With SuperPi Mod 1.9, I believe lower is better. So Intel Core i9-10900K shows much better performance. I think that's probably due to the fact that Intel Core i9 has a higher clock speed. Cinebench, so Ryzen 3950X just does way better because there's more cores. WinRAR, you get much better performance with Intel i9-10900K. Puget Photoshop, I'm not too sure what that, I believe that would be Adobe Photoshop, but it seems like the Intel's does better with the Photoshop. This is Far Cry 5, and Intel Core i9-10900K still does better. This is Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed does better in Intel. So basically, if you want more cores, or if you think your system, if your work has more, requires more cores, then you would get the 3950X or the 3900X. But if you're after more clock speed, then or IPCs, then yeah, you would be after an Intel. So it depends on your use case, what you'd want. But it feels as though that a lot of open world games, it's probably leaning towards using more cores as we head down to, I guess, the next couple of years, especially with the way that the next gen consoles have 8 cores, 16 threads. A lot of the programming will be written so that it uses all the cores, as many cores as possible. And I really think that's the way that a lot of the software will be written as we progress. So if you buy the Intel Core i9, just know that you'll probably have less cores in a few years, and maybe AMD comes out with 16 cores, 32 threads as say like their second or third high tier. Maybe they'll have 32 cores and 64 cores as their highest tier, and so there'll be games that take advantage of more cores later on. Not right now, but maybe later. Now the power consumption, they've said that Intel Core i9-10900K use a lot more power than the 3950X or the 3900X. So the 3950X is about $700, I believe. The Ryzen 9 3900X is $400, and I believe the i9-10900K is about 480, 500, something around that. So really, it's not really fair to compare the 3950X. You could say that for some applications, the 10900K beats out the 3950X, even though it's $200-300 cheaper. That's because the Intel has higher clock speeds, or can be clocked higher, and the IPCs are better. But it's better to compare the 10900K with the 3900X because it's only about $100 difference. And this is a 12-core CPU versus a 10-core CPU, rather than a 10-core versus a 16-core. But I think that, yeah, look, if you are trying to choose between the 3900X and the 10900K, if you're looking into the future, if I had to pick one, it would be the 3900X, even though I'd probably rather pick the 3950X. I just think 1632 makes a lot of sense, scalability wise, because if you pick the 3900X, it's 12 cores, 24 threads. Now, your game is going to take 8 cores, and so you're only left with 4 cores for other work. Say maybe you're streaming something in the background, or you're recording a video. I think the 4 cores is the 4 extra cores from 3900 to the 3950 is very useful. Here, if you're playing a game 3950X, you're playing a game. It may say assume, like, I'm sure it will use all 16 cores when you play the game, but like if you use 8 cores for the game, you still have like 8 cores free to do other things that you want to do. Maybe you can run 2 things at the same time. Yeah, so I feel like 3950X is a lot more future-proof than the 3900X. That said, it's almost like $300-400 difference. This is $400 and this is $700, so you have to pay like a 75% premium just for the extra 4 cores. Is it really worth it? Probably not. I think maybe the 3900X is good enough to suffice for most use cases, and then after about 4 or 5 years, then whether you have the 3900X and the 3950X, you'd have to replace either of those two anyway. But I feel like you might be able to squeeze another year out of the 3950X a bit more. The 10900K, I like the gaming performance in the 10900K here, but I'm not sure I would go for it if it's just the 10 cores, 20 threads. I feel like we're moving into a future where more cores are required. But yeah, so we'll have to see like what other people are thinking, whether they just want to get this just for gaming, or they feel like they want to get a more all-rounded CPU, sorry. Yeah, I think that's really interesting, the benchmarks. I'll leave a link in the description below so you can check that out. But, you know, video cards, they had a pretty neutral headline. One that did not have a neutral headline for this was Tom's Hardware. See if it loads. Leaked Core i9 10900K review shows it barely surpassing the Ryzen 9 3900X. I just wanted to show this because a lot of people have been commenting that like all of the news outlets have been AMD fanboys, and you know, if people keep on writing in this style, yeah, everyone is going to think AMD. Everyone is an AMD fanboy. We try not to be on this channel. We try to give more neutral responses. It is clear that AMD is catching up with their products. I think people are just looking to get on the the horse that is going to win the race all the time, bandwagoning, if you will. So yeah, I don't really like this headline, but because it's not true, because they show one graph where it's Intel Core i9-10900K, where they basically have the same performance, and that's really all they show. Whereas video cards has all of the benchmarks from their testing. So I don't know about this this article. It seems a bit biased, if you ask me. Alright, so that's going to do it for the show today. Thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed the show, please click on the like button, and also subscribe to the channel for more news. We'll have more news stories as it comes out during the week. But until next time, thanks for watching, and bye.